The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 15,000 years, and in all that time, they had never known war. They called themselves the Enlightened Ones, and they believed they had created the perfect system for peace and progress across 1,000 worlds. At the heart of this system was a tradition they called the harvest. Every 100 years, each member species would offer a small number of their young to the Council's research facilities on Nexus Prime, the great station at the center of known space. The Council scientists studied these children to advance medicine, to understand genetics, and to push the boundaries of knowledge for the good of all species. At least, that was what the Council told everyone. The truth was much darker. The children were test subjects, nothing more. They were poked and prodded and experimented on until their bodies gave out. None of them ever returned home. But the galaxy had accepted this for so long that most species no longer questioned it. The Volanthi had given their children for 10,000 years. The Kovathi believed it was the will of their gods. The Zelathi had cried at first, but they had learned to be silent. Every species had learned to be silent. And then humanity arrived. The humans had crawled up from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, and they had reached the stars only 200 years before. They were young and loud and emotional in ways that made the older species uncomfortable. The Council watched them spread across 12 colony worlds with something like amusement. These creatures fought among themselves, loved too strongly, and cried too easily. They were weak, the Council decided. They would be easy to control. When humanity applied to join the Galactic Council in the year 2847, the Volanthi ambassador named Iril then was given the task of handling the negotiations. Irilthan was old and clever, and he had brought hundreds of species into the Council over his long career. He looked at the human diplomats with their soft faces and their eager smiles, and he felt nothing but contempt. These creatures would sign anything, he thought. And he was right. The treaty was 2,000 pages long, written in the ancient legal language of the Volanthi. The human translators worked for months to understand it, but there were sections that made no sense to them. When they asked about the phrase contribution of developmental subjects, Irilthan smiled and told them it referred to educational exchange programs. The humans nodded and signed the document. They had no idea what they had agreed to. For 50 years, humanity grew and prospered as part of the Council. They built new colonies and traded with alien species and believed they had found their place among the stars. They were happy. And then the harvest came for them. New Eden was a small colony world at the edge of human space, home to just 300,000 people. It was a peaceful place, full of farms and schools and families who had come looking for a quiet life. On the night the Volanthi ships arrived, the children of New Eden were sleeping in their beds. Ambassador Iril then himself had come to oversee the collection. He brought with him 100 soldiers in black armor and a medical team with sedation equipment. They moved through the colony like ghosts, entering homes and taking children without a sound. 47 children were selected based on genetic markers that the Council's scientists found interesting. The youngest was a girl of 6 named Maya, who had been dreaming of her birthday party. The oldest was a boy of 12 named Thomas, who had been reading a book about space explorers. The soldiers sedated them and carried them to the waiting ships. By morning, they were gone. When the parents of New Eden woke to find their children missing, they did not understand what had happened. They searched their homes and called their neighbors and ran through the streets, shouting the names of their sons and daughters. It was the colony's governor who discovered the truth. A message had been left in her office, an official notice from the Galactic Council. It thanked New Eden for its contribution to galactic progress. It listed the names of the 47 children who had been collected. It wished the colony well. The governor read the message 3 times before she understood what it meant. Her own daughter Maya was on that list. She screamed then, a sound so terrible that her staff came running. Within hours, every parent on New Eden knew the truth. The Volanthi had taken their children. The Council had authorized it. And the treaty humanity had signed gave them the legal right to do it. The parents of New Eden gathered in the town square, holding pictures of their missing children. They cried and they raged and they demanded answers. News spread across human space like fire. Every colony heard the story. Every ship received the transmission. Every human saw the faces of those 47 children. On Earth, the United Nations called an emergency session. On Mars, workers stopped their machines and stared at their screens in silence. On 100 worlds, humans felt something they had not felt in generations. They felt rage. But what frightened the Council's observers most was not the anger. It was what came after. The screaming stopped. The crying ended. And then there was only silence. The humans stopped sending diplomatic messages. They stopped responding to trade inquiries. They stopped talking to anyone. The Council's representatives on human worlds reported that something had changed. The humans were still there, still going about their daily lives, but their eyes were different now. There was something cold in them, something the Council had never seen before. On Nexus Prime, High Counselor Jetheri received these reports and dismissed them. The humans were upset, yes, but they would accept the situation eventually. Every species did. In a few years, they would understand that the sacrifice was necessary. He was sure of it. But far across the galaxy, in the command center of the UN's Prometheus, Admiral Helena Vance was staring at a picture of a 6-year-old girl named Maya. The girl's mother had sent it to her personally, along with a single message. The message contained only 2 words: "Bring her home." Admiral Vance set down the picture and looked at her officers. They were all waiting, every one of them. They were waiting for her to say the words they all wanted to hear. She stood up slowly and straightened her uniform. Then she spoke in a voice as cold as the void between stars. "All ships, prepare for war." The humans were done being silent. Admiral Helena Vance had served in the United Nations Space Command for 32 years, and she had never issued an order like this one. Within 6 hours of her command, every human vessel in 3 sectors had broken from their assigned patrols and begun moving toward a single destination. The Council had never seen anything like it. There had been no debate in the human parliament. There had been no votes or committees or long discussions about what to do. The moment humanity learned what had happened to those children, something changed inside every single human being. It was as if they all shared the same mind, the same heart, the same burning need for justice. Captains abandoned their trade routes without asking permission. Soldiers volunteered for combat duty without being asked. Scientists left their labs and headed for military recruitment centers. Teachers told their students to study hard, and then they walked out the door and never came back. On the colony world of New Shanghai, a grandfather named Chen Wei-Lin watched his grandson practice with a toy sword. The boy was only 8 years old, the same age as some of the children who had been taken. Chen Wei-Lin looked at his grandson and thought about what he would do if anyone ever tried to take him away. The answer came to him immediately. He would kill them. He would kill every single one of them. And in that moment, he understood why every human in the galaxy was preparing for war. It was not about politics or power or territory. It was about children. It was about family. It was about the simple truth that some things could not be forgiven. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the human movements with confusion. High Counselor Jetheri called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, and he had led the Council for 300 years. In all that time, he had never seen a species react to the harvest this way. "They are upset," said Ambassador Errolthan, waving one of his long-fingered hands dismissively. "They will calm down soon enough, and they will see reason." "I am not so sure," said Councillor Miraset of the Zillithi Collective. She was a small creature with silver scales and bright blue eyes, and she had always felt uncomfortable with the harvest. "The humans are not like us, and may not think the way we think." "Nonsense," Errolthan replied. "All species value survival, and the humans know they cannot win a war against the Council. We have 2 million warships, and they have fewer than 50. They will bluster and threaten, and then they will accept reality." But even as Errolthan spoke, the human ambassador was leaving Nexus Prime. Ambassador Chen Wei was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, and she had spent 20 years building relationships with other species. Now she walked through the halls of the council building for the last time. Errolthan caught up with her near the exit. "Ambassador Chun," he said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Surely you are not leaving us already?" "I am afraid so," Chen Wei replied, and her voice was perfectly calm. "My government has recalled all diplomatic personnel. But we have so much to discuss," Errolthan said. "The harvest is an ancient tradition, and there are procedures for expressing concerns. If humanity has objections, we can schedule a committee meeting to review the matter." Chen Wei stopped walking and turned to face him. "You took our children," she said. "You stole them from their beds while they were sleeping. You are going to cut them open and study them like animals." Errolthan's smile did not waver. "For the good of all species," he said. "Surely you can see the value in such research?" Chen Wei looked at him for a long moment. "You should not have touched the children," she said. Then she turned and walked away. Errolthan watched her go with a feeling he could not quite name. For just a second, he thought he saw something in her eyes that frightened him. But he shook off the feeling and returned to the council chamber. The humans would calm down, he told himself. They always did. 3 days later, a council delegation ship was sent to negotiate with the humans. The ship carried Volanti diplomats, Korvathi priests, and Zilathi trade specialists. Their mission was simple: explain the importance of the harvest and convince the humans to accept it. The ship never reached its destination. 14 human destroyers appeared out of nowhere and surrounded the delegation vessel. The council officers on board had never seen human warships up close. They were smaller than council vessels, yes, but there was something about them that made the Volanti captain uncomfortable. They moved too fast, changed direction too quickly, and their weapons were already powered up and ready. Then a voice came through the communication system. "This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Nations Space Command." The voice was cold and steady, without any emotion at all. "You have 72 of your hours to return our children unharmed. After that time has passed, there will be no more warnings. There will be no negotiations. There will be no mercy." The Volanthi captain tried to respond, to explain, to reason with these humans. But the communication channel was already closed. The human ships pulled back and disappeared into the darkness of space. When the delegation returned to Nexus Prime and reported what had happened, the council laughed. High Counselor Zethari found the whole thing amusing. 72 hours, he said, shaking his head. Or what? What are they going to do with their 43 little ships? We have millions of vessels, entire fleets that could crush them in an afternoon. Let them make their threats, and let them learn what happens when primitive species challenge the might of the council. The other council members nodded and murmured their agreement. Only Counselor Miraset remained silent. She had studied humanity when they first joined the council. She had read their history, their wars, their stories. And she remembered something that the others had forgotten. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not calculate the odds and choose the logical path. When you threaten their children, They did not think about survival at all. They thought only about revenge. Mirset wanted to say something, to warn the council that they were making a terrible mistake. But she knew they would not listen. So she said nothing, and she waited. She waited for the storm that she knew was coming. And far across the galaxy, Admiral Vance looked at the countdown timer on her screen. 72 hours, she had told them. But she had no intention of waiting that long. The council had taken human children. They had laughed at human threats. They thought they were safe behind their millions of ships and their ancient traditions. They were wrong. All ships, Vance said into her communicator. Execute Operation Black Dawn. We are not waiting. We are not negotiating. We are coming for our children, and God help anyone who stands in our way. The human fleet began to move, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Council expected the humans to attack their military bases. They expected a traditional war with battle lines and fleet formations and careful tactical planning. They were prepared for that kind of war. They had been preparing for thousands of years. But humanity did not fight the way the Council expected. Humanity fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. On the first day, human ships appeared in 12 different systems at the exact same moment. They did not attack warships or military stations. Instead, they targeted communication relays. Within hours, entire sectors of Council space could no longer talk to each other. Fleet commanders sent orders that never arrived. Supply convoys waited for instructions that never came. The carefully organized machine of the Galactic Council began to fall apart. High Counselor Zethari demanded to know what was happening, but his own staff could not tell him. How is this possible? He shouted at his admirals. We have millions of ships. We have the greatest military force in galactic history. How are 43 human vessels doing this much damage? But the admirals had no answers. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. They struck without warning and vanished before Council forces could respond. They moved faster than any species should be able to move. And they never stopped, not even for a moment. On the second day, human ships attacked the trade routes that connected Council worlds. Cargo vessels carrying food and medicine and fuel were stopped and searched. The humans did not destroy them. Instead, they took what they needed and sent the ships on their way with a message. Return our children. The message spread across Council space like a virus. Every merchant captain, every trader, every transport pilot heard the same words. Return our children. On the third day, the humans struck at the fuel depots that powered the Council's fleets. 3 massive stations, each one holding enough fuel to power 1,000 warships, were destroyed in a single hour. The Council admirals could not understand how the humans had found them. These stations were secret, hidden in empty space far from any star system. But the humans had found them anyway. Years later, the Council would learn the truth. Human intelligence officers had spent decades mapping Council infrastructure. They had planted spies on every world and hacked into every database. They had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. On the 4th day, the Kavati homeworld lost power. The humans had attacked the orbital stations that provided energy to the planet below. For 16 hours, the Kavati lived in darkness. No one was killed, but the psychological damage was enormous. The Kavati had known nothing but comfort and safety for 10,000 years. They had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. Now they remembered. Millions of Kavati looked up at the dark sky and felt terror for the first time in their lives. And in that darkness, they began to ask questions. Why had the Council allowed this to happen? Why had the humans attacked them? What had the Council done to make these creatures so angry? When the power returned, the Kavathi were different. They began to talk about the harvest. They began to wonder if it was worth it. On the 5th day, Admiral Vance led her fleet directly into Volanthi space. The Volanthi were the most powerful species in the Council, with the largest fleet and the richest worlds. They were also the species that had organized the harvest. Ambassador Irel then had personally supervised the taking of the human children. Vance wanted him to pay. The Volanthi trade fleet was the economic backbone of 3 sectors. Hundreds of massive ships carried goods worth more than most planets. And Ambassador Erothan's personal yacht was traveling with them. Vance's fleet appeared around the trade convoy like wolves surrounding a herd of sheep. The Volanthi warships escorting the convoy tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The humans did not destroy them. Instead, they disabled their engines and left them floating in space. Then they captured every single trade ship. Ambassador Eril then watched from his yacht as humans in battle armor boarded his vessel. He tried to negotiate, to threaten, to bribe. But the humans did not say a word. They simply took him prisoner and flew away. News of Erothan's capture spread across the galaxy. For the first time, Council members began to feel real fear. If the humans could capture a Council ambassador, what else could they do? On the 6th day, something even worse happened. A single human transport landed on Nexus Prime itself. The station was supposed to be the most secure location in the galaxy. Thousands of guards protected it. Millions of sensors watched every approach. But somehow, a team of 12 humans got through. Major Samira Okonkwo led the infiltration team. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that showed no fear. She had been a soldier for 20 years, and she had fought in a dozen conflicts on Earth. But nothing had prepared her for this mission. Her orders were simple: find the children and bring them home. The team moved through the research facility like shadows. They knew exactly where to go, thanks to intelligence gathered over years of secret work. They reached the wing where the human children were supposed to be held. And that was where they found the guards. 40 Volanthi soldiers in heavy armor blocked the corridor. They had weapons that could tear through steel. They had been trained since birth to fight and kill. And they outnumbered the humans more than 3 to 1. The battle lasted less than 4 minutes. When it was over, all 40 Volanthi were dead. Not a single shot had been fired. The humans had killed them with knives and bare hands. The security teams that arrived later could not understand what they were seeing. The Volanthi were larger and stronger than humans. They had better armor and better weapons. How could 12 humans have killed 40 of them without taking a single casualty? But the children were not there. Someone had moved them before the team arrived. Major Okonkwo stood in the empty room where the children should have been. She felt anger rising in her chest like a fire. Someone had warned the Council. Someone had told them the humans were coming. She turned to the wall and pulled out her combat knife. With slow, deliberate strokes, she carved a message into the metal. "We are coming. All of us. And we will not stop." Then, she led her team back to their ship and escaped into the stars. When High Counselor Zethari saw the message, he felt something he had not felt in 300 years. He felt afraid. The humans were not like other species. They did not give up when they faced impossible odds. They did not accept defeat when they were outnumbered. They just kept coming again and again, no matter how many of them fell. For the first time, Zethari wondered if the Council had made a terrible mistake. For the first time, he wondered if the harvest had been worth it. And far across the galaxy, Major Okonkwo was already planning her next move. The children were still out there somewhere, and she would not rest until she found them. "We are coming," she whispered to herself. "We will never stop." And she meant every word. The Black Week changed everything. For 15,000 years, the Galactic Council had told its member species that the harvest was necessary. They had said it was the price of peace. They had said it was for the greater good. And for 15,000 years, the galaxy had believed them. But now the humans had shown everyone the truth. The council was not as powerful as it seemed. The harvest was not accepted by everyone, and some species were willing to fight back. On the Zalathi homeworld, a historian named Kira Veen made a discovery that would change history. She had been searching through ancient records, trying to understand why the humans were so angry. What she found horrified her. The Zalathi had given 2,000 children to the harvest over the past 10,000 years. 2,000 children who had never come home. The council had always said they were sent to study at great universities. They had said the children grew up to become scientists and leaders. But Kiravine found no records of any Zalathi child ever returning. She found no records of them going to universities. All she found were lists of names, each one marked contribution received. And then nothing. It was as if those children had simply disappeared. Kiravine shared her findings with the Zalathi media. Within hours, every Zalathi in the galaxy knew the truth. Their children had not been sent to study. They had been sent to die. The Zalathi were a peaceful species, known for their calm and rational thinking. But when they learned what the council had done, that calm shattered. Riots broke out on a dozen worlds. Zalathi citizens stormed government buildings, demanding answers. "Where are our children?" they screamed. "What did you do to them?" The Zalathi government had no answers. They had believed the council's lies just like everyone else. But the people did not care about excuses. They wanted justice. On the Kuvathi homeworld, the same questions were being asked. The Kuvathi theocracy had always taught that the harvest was the will of the gods. Children who were taken were said to be blessed. They would serve a higher purpose in the afterlife. But after the humans attacked, young Kuvathi began to doubt. If the harvest was divine, why were the gods allowing the humans to win? If the children were blessed, why had no one ever seen them again? A young priest named Thalmor stood before his congregation and spoke the words that everyone was thinking. "The gods did not ask for our children," he said. "The council did. We have been lied to for 10,000 years. Our children were not blessed. They were sacrificed." The reaction was immediate. Some Kuvathi covered their ears and refused to listen. But many more nodded and began to cry. They had always suspected the truth. They had just been too afraid to admit it. Now they were not afraid anymore. High Counselor Zethari watched these events unfold with growing panic. The Council's power had always rested on the cooperation of its member species. If that cooperation collapsed, the Council would collapse with it. He called an emergency meeting of all Council members. "We must respond to the human threat with overwhelming force," he declared. "I am calling for a combined fleet action. Every species must send warships to crush these barbarians once and for all." But the response was not what he expected. The Zalathi ambassador stood and shook her head. "The Zalathi collective will not send ships to fight the humans," she said. "We have lost too many children already. We will not lose any more." Zethari stared at her in shock. "You are refusing a council order?" "We are refusing to participate in a war that should never have started," the ambassador replied. "The humans are not our enemy. The harvest is our enemy." More ambassadors rose to speak. The Kuvathi would send only a token force of 10 ships. The Yemari Consortium would send nothing at all. 8 species announced they were withdrawing from the council entirely. And then something even more shocking happened. The Yemari ambassador approached Zethari with a cold smile. "We have decided to help the humans," she said. "We are providing them with intelligence about council military positions. We are giving them maps of Nexus Prime's defenses. We hope they burn this entire rotten system to the ground." Zethari could not believe what he was hearing. "You are traitors," he shouted. "You will be punished for this." The Yamari ambassador laughed in his face. "Punished by who?" she asked. "Your fleets are scattered and confused. Your economy is collapsing. Your allies are abandoning you. The humans have already won, Counselor. They just have not finished collecting their prize yet." She turned and walked away, and Zethari could not stop her. The council that had ruled for 15,000 years was falling apart, and humanity had not even brought its full strength to bear yet. Far from Nexus Prime, Admiral Vance received reports about the council's collapse. She allowed herself a small smile, but only for a moment. The children were still missing. The war was not over. She looked at the fleet status board and saw something that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Human ships were arriving from every corner of the galaxy. Colony worlds had sent every vessel they could spare. Mine ships had been fitted with weapons. Cargo haulers had been converted to troop transports. The human fleet had started with 43 warships. Now it numbered in the thousands. And more were coming every day. Every human who could hold a weapon wanted to fight. Scientists and artists and teachers had become soldiers. Grandparents and teenagers and everyone in between. They all wanted the same thing. They all wanted to bring those children home. Ambassador Chen Wei recorded a final message to the council. It was broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. Every species heard her words. 15,000 years ago, you built your peace on the bones of children, she said. You told yourselves it was necessary. You told yourselves it was good. You forgot what it means to protect the helpless. You forgot because you never truly loved anything more than your own comfort. We are here to remind you. We are humanity, and we will burn your peace to ashes to save even one of our children. The message ended, and across the galaxy, billions of beings from hundreds of species felt something shift inside them. Some felt hope for the first time in their lives. Some felt shame for what they had allowed to happen. And some felt fear because they knew what was coming next. The humans were done with warnings. The humans were done with speeches. Now they were coming for their children, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. The Battle of Nexus Prime was not a battle. It was a reckoning. The human fleet arrived at the galactic capital like a storm of fire and steel. Thousands of ships poured through the defensive lines, and the Council's forces could do nothing to stop them. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of the Uns Prometheus, watching the chaos unfold. Council vessels tried to form defensive formations, but the humans tore through them like paper. Focus on the station, Vance ordered. Everything else is secondary. Our children are in there, and we are bringing them home. The human pilots flew with a fury that terrified their enemies. They took risks that no sane commander would approve. They ignored damage warnings and power failures and kept fighting. When one ship was destroyed, the survivors in escape pods continued firing with handheld weapons. When ammunition ran out, some pilots rammed their ships into enemy vessels. They did not care about their own lives. They cared only about the children. Captain Marcus Cole of the destroyer Un's Vengeance found his ship surrounded by 7 Council cruisers. His weapons were depleted. His engines were failing. His crew had taken heavy casualties. But through his viewport, he could see Nexus Prime. He could see the station where 47 human children were being held. All hands, he said over the ship's communication system. It has been an honor serving with you. Now let us show these bastards what happens when you take our kids. He aimed his crippled ship at the largest Council cruiser and pushed the engines to maximum. The Vengeance slammed into the cruiser at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. But the destruction created a gap in the Council's defensive line. A gap that 100 human ships immediately poured through. On the surface of Nexus Prime, Major Samira Okonkwo led the ground assault. 10,000 human soldiers followed her into the station's corridors. They had one mission: find the children. The council had moved them to the central spire, the most heavily defended building on the station. Thousands of elite guards protected it. The Volanthi had sent their best warriors. They were larger than humans, stronger than humans, and better equipped than humans. They believed they could not be defeated. They were wrong. The humans attacked with a savagery that the Volanthi had never seen. They fought in ways that made no tactical sense. Soldiers threw themselves on grenades to protect their comrades. Officers led charges into certain death without hesitation. Wounded soldiers refused to retreat and kept fighting until they could not move. A young private named James Chen found himself face to face with a Volanthi commander twice his size. The Volanthi swung a massive blade that should have cut James in half. But James ducked under the swing and drove his combat knife into the Volanthi's throat. As the alien fell, James looked at his weapon and whispered the same words that every human soldier was thinking. "This is for the children." Level by level, the humans fought their way up to Central Spire. They took casualties that would have broken any other army. But they did not break. They could not break. Not when those children were waiting for them. Major Okonkwo reached the top floor with only 50 soldiers still standing. Hundreds had fallen along the way. But those 50 were enough. They kicked down the doors of the High Counselor's chambers. And there, huddled in a corner, surrounded by guards, were 47 human children. They were scared and confused, but they were alive. Every single one of them was alive. High Counselor Zethari stood before them, his forearms raised in surrender. "Please," he said, "we can negotiate. We can find a solution that benefits everyone." Major Okonkwo walked toward him slowly. Her armor was covered in blood. Her face was streaked with dirt and sweat. But her eyes were clear and steady. "You took our children," she said. "You stole them from their homes. You were going to cut them open and study them like animals. There is nothing to negotiate." Zethari tried to speak, but Okonkwo raised her hand. "You are going to surrender unconditionally," she said. "You are going to release every child from every species that was ever taken. You are going to destroy every research facility. You are going to end the harvest forever. And if you refuse, if you say even one word of protest, I will kill you where you stand." Zethari looked into her eyes and saw no mercy. He saw no room for bargaining. He saw only the cold determination of a species that had crossed the galaxy to save its children. "I surrender," he whispered. The Galactic Council fell that day. In the weeks that followed, the harvest was abolished. The research facilities were destroyed. Records were released showing every child who had been taken over 15,000 years. Billions of names from hundreds of species. Billions of children who had never come home. Monuments were built on every homeworld to honor the lost. Species that had been enemies found common cause in their shared grief. The Zelathi and the Korvathi and a dozen others formed a new alliance. They called themselves the Children's Covenant. They swore that no child would ever be taken again. And humanity? The humans went home. They took their 47 children back to New Eden. They built no empire. They demanded no territory. They asked for no power or wealth or glory. When other species asked why they had risked everything for just 47 lives, Admiral Vance gave a simple answer. Because they were ours. And we will never stop coming for what is ours. On New Eden, a 6-year-old girl named Maya ran into her mother's arms. The governor held her daughter and cried tears of joy. "I knew you would come for me," Maya said. "I told the other kids not to be scared. I told them the grown-ups would save us." Her mother held her tighter and could not speak. Nearby, A 12-year-old boy named Thomas stood with his parents. He was different now, older in ways that no child should be. But he was alive. He was home. And that was all that mattered. Years later, historians would write about the Human Council War. They would analyze the tactics and the strategies and the political implications. But they would always come back to the same simple truth. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had thought humans were weak and emotional and easy to control. They had forgotten that those emotions were not weaknesses. They were strengths. Love for their children had made humans unstoppable. Rage at injustice had made them fearless. The bonds of family had made them willing to burn down the stars themselves. The Galactic Historical Archive recorded the events with a single entry. Let this be remembered. On this day, humanity taught the galaxy that some bonds cannot be broken, some prices cannot be paid, and some species will tear down the heavens themselves for the sake of their young. Let no species ever forget. Let no one ever make this mistake again. And in all the years that followed, no one ever did. The galaxy had learned its lesson. You could threaten humanity. You could challenge them. You could even defeat them in battle. But if you touched their children, there was no force in the universe that could save you, because humanity would come for them. They would always come for them, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, no matter how long it took. They would never, ever stop. And that was the day the galaxy learned to fear the quiet ones. That was the day they learned to respect the power of love. That was the day humanity showed everyone what they were truly made of. Not just clever apes from a small blue world, but parents, warriors, a species that would burn everything to save their children. And the galaxy would never forget it.